Jerry, we're ready. Good morning, everyone. My name's Marcus Fuller. I'm the Assistant City Manager, and I'm also currently serving as City Engineer. And so we welcome you all here today. This is, in my experience, the first hearing the city's held pursuant to the Public Contract Code on a substitution request for a subcontractor. So bear with us as we go through this process. Our special attorney, Barbara Gadboy, is here to my left representing the city on this matter. So as I mentioned, today's hearing is being held in accordance with Public Contract Code Section 4107, which allows for the city's consent to Hal Hayes' request to substitute California granite and flooring with another contractor, More Flooring. So as you know, Hal Hayes has submitted a letter to you dated August 30th requesting, to the city, requesting our consent to the substitution, which we followed up and sent to you in accordance with the Public Contract Code. And this relates to the ceramic tile portion of the work and corrections of defective work that was installed in the locker rooms, the training center area, and upcoming work to complete in the lobby and records areas on the grounds that California Granite's performance has been unsatisfactory despite numerous opportunities to rectify the scope of work completed by California Granite. The city's owner's rep is Wildan Engineering, and Wildan issued a letter on our behalf to you notifying you of the substitution request. And in accordance with the law, within the time frames allowed, you've advised us that you are not consenting to the substitution. So we then notified you of the hearing today, and here we are today. So thank you all for your time today. So basically, the Public Contract Code allows the city to consent to substitution of a listed subcontractor for a specific reason listed in the law. And in this case, we're focusing on potentially two of those listed reasons. One of those being when a listed subcontractor fails or refuses to perform his or her subcontract, or when the awarding authority or its duly authorized officer determines the work performed by the listed subcontractor is substantially unsatisfactory and not in substantial accordance with the plans and specifications, or that the subcontractor is substantially delaying or disrupting the progress of the work. So on those grounds, my role here is to determine whether those issues or any of other statutory enumerated circumstances for the city's consent exist, and if so, whether to approve More as the substitute contractor for the tile work. So we've established a format for today's hearing. I don't know if you need this much time, but we're going to allow you up to 15 minutes. We'll start with Hal Hayes to give its case to me for the substitution. And then California Granite, you'll have 15 minutes to explain why you should be retained as the subcontractor. And then each of you can have 5 minutes for a closing statement. This is not a formal legal proceeding, so formal rules of evidence don't apply. So it's a little more flexible and casual here, but it is certainly a legal matter in terms of substituting the subcontractor. Counsel for the parties may lead witnesses, and their responses may be narrative. I can grant more time if it's necessary, if you feel that you need more than 15 minutes and 5 minutes. So I've reviewed the list of witnesses, which I don't know that I have one. And I haven't seen any legal briefs and I've seen I've seen what documentation has been submitted to me. So, the burden of the proof is on Hal Hayes to provide justification for the substitution. And so my responsibility is to determine whether substitution request is reasonable and to protect the legal rights of California Granite. And even though the owner is the contracting agency. I'm here to be impartial and to listen to both sides, so I want you to understand that. And I intend to take that seriously, my responsibility, because my decision will be final. This issue won't be elevated to the city council or any level further than that. I don't intend to make a decision today. I don't think that that's fair to you. So we'll take all the information and render a decision probably by Monday. Take today and tomorrow, and then work on a response regarding today's hearing. We will take whatever evidence. If you have additional evidence that needs to be submitted, it needs to be considered an exhibit to the ruling that we issue, so it will be marked as an exhibit, so we'd have to keep it. So if during your verbal testimony you're going to provide any additional documentation, we need to be able to keep it and mark it as an exhibit. Did I catch everything?
The only other thing, we want to remind you that it is being audio recorded, and it's also video recorded.
Yes.
And I believe that copies will be made available for everybody that's attending. And so when you speak, if you push the button on the microphone and then turn it off when you're done. And we did get some documentation from Hal Hayes, and so I assume you just submitted it to the city, and you did not give copies to... Okay, so if you need to refer to that, we have copies of it, and we'll give you copies of what they submitted, and everything, like Mr. Fuller said, will be attached to the notice of ruling, but we'll give it to you before you leave today. Okay? That's it.
So with that, we'll open the hearing and begin with Hal Hayes Construction. So,
thank you, Marcus. My name is Karun Mani. I'm a project manager with Hal Hayes Construction. So we presented the city with some documentation that we just want to go over. Firstly, California Granite and Flooring was a listed subcontractor on our bid package, and rightfully they were awarded the subcontract for this project. Going just chronologically, we gave you guys documentation of 4 48-hour notices that we've sent California Granite and Flooring through the course of the project. It basically outlines the frustration we've had with them. I mean, Hal Hayes has really tried working and giving California Granite and Flooring opportunities to get their work corrected. The first 48-hour notice was basically we didn't get their submittals in time for the tile. The prime contract required us to order lead time materials under a certain time limit, and we did not get initial submittals for I believe up to 5 weeks since the subcontract was awarded to them. So that basically threw us back on our project time on the locker room. So that's the first 48-hour notice you guys see over there. That basically put us back on getting material on site on time, and affected the start of the ceramic tile work. The next 48-hour notice you guys see there is basically the lack of manpower on the project to man it up. We had some issues with getting California Granite's crew live scanned on time, and that's well documented by the city and well done engineering. Since we were delayed on starting the project, we were trying to give the subcontractor and letting them know that they need to provide additional manpower, which they could not supply. On a side note, we tried accelerating the schedule by asking the city if we could work a couple of Saturdays. Hal Hayes, superintendent, showed up on a couple of Saturdays, and the subcontractor's crew was a no-show, and the city was rightfully upset about that. And the third 48-hour notice you guys see is basically the notice because of the defects in the tile work that was installed in the locker room. We basically, through the course of the tile install, we saw some issues along with Wildan, and obviously I know the subcontractor is going to bring up the point of the walls being not plumb. I think that was one of the rebuttals, but is one of the documentation that's been provided to you guys, the signed subcontract between Hal Hayes Construction and California Granite, with which it's industry standard. It's on their subcontract that before any subcontractor installs their scope of work on a substrate, that if they proceed with installation, that's their acceptance of the substrate. So that it's on their signed subcontract, and we were not notified before they started the tile install that the walls were not plumb. I think we were almost 80% into the tile install when this was brought up. So when this was brought up, Hal Hayes and the city and Wildan Engineering had a couple of meetings, and we did rectify a couple of areas that the walls were not plumb, and that was corrected. We after the third 48-hour notice, we directed California Granite to order more material to start with their grout repairs and repairs on the defective tile work, which we gave them around 6 weeks to get the tile ordered. Again, when the tile arrived and they started with the repair work, Hal Hayes Construction, we had additional supervision on site, and we also provided with a third-party quality control inspector to help the subcontractor get the work corrected and hopefully turn around the locker rooms in time. Even with the additional supervision and the third-party inspector, the repair work was deemed unsatisfactory by our crew and by the city. And that's what you see on the fourth 48-hour notice, where even the repair to the defective work was deemed unsatisfactory. That's where we're at. I think with all the documentation that we've provided, Hal Hayes, we've tried working with the subcontractor. We've tried helping them. We never want to see a subcontractor kicked off a project. But I think everybody's frustrations is well documented. Other than that, our substitution request is to substitute California Granite with more flooring. More flooring is one of our tile subcontractors who we work with on a couple of past projects, especially at the Ontario Police Department, and we can provide references for them. And we'd like to use more flooring to finish the tile work that's pending, and also whatever repair work is deemed necessary in the locker rooms. So that's all we have.
Can you elaborate on more tile, their qualifications, and why they are a preferred subcontractor over California Granite?
Basically, I believe it's our relationship with More Flooring and the successful projects that we've delivered with More Flooring in the past. With California Granite here, it was a low bid project, and it's our first project with California Granite with with more flooring, we can submit, as I said, we can submit references and their qualifications. We've done at least 3 successful projects with them as far as style work in the Ontario Police Department and with a couple of our utility agency in their TI projects. If this is accepted, we'll I think at Hal Hayes we have a confidence that we have a subcontractor who's at least willing to work and provide mock-ups of the repairs as necessary in the locker room and kind of can work as a team over here and get this get this project over the line. That is one of the main issues we had with the subcontractor of not being able to work as a team to get these repairs done in time. Done in time and accepted. So.
And did Moore bid the project to you as a subcontractor originally?
Initially, I believe they did not. We did invite them, but they had other projects that we're busy with.
And they have the capacity to immediately start working if they were substituted and are aware of the full range of the condition of the areas of work and what needs to be done?
Yes. So when we sent in the substitution request, that's when we had a conversation with Moore Flooring before we put their name on the substitution request, where they could man this project up within a week of this substitution getting approved. Obviously, there's the live scan process that we need to go with, but they have manpower available to get on the project within a week.
So, do you have anything further? Okay. So now we'll turn to California Granite. So we'll start your time.
Sure. Like I said, it's not a formal legal hearing here. So unfortunately, a lot of this does come down to hearsay. The fact of the matter is, my story, our story, does not coincide with Mr. Mani's story in the least bit. I have here available for you 4 or 5 different instances where I have, to an extent, to a very detailed extent, described all the issues to Mr. Mani. Have requested multiple sit-downs with him to talk over the project because he is, from my understanding, not present on site very often. And to me, it seems there's a big disconnect between what goes on from Hal Hayes' field management team to their office management team, and Mr. Mani's team, who we do have to keep in communication with. He says that that they've attempted.
Not to interrupt, but so have you submitted those to us yet, or they're here just today?
I brought these with me. I have not submitted them.
Okay, so we'll need to take those so we
Sure.
can make copies.
Sure.
And so I can review them.
Understood. Their email correspondences back and forth between each other, spanning over the duration of the entire project. Like I said, different checkpoints at which I've attempted to say, March, we're at this point, we need to sit down. No response. April, we're at this point, we need to sit down. No response. July, we need to sit down. No response. Now, Mr. Mani says that he hates to see any subcontractor in the situation. They've extended help to us. At this precise moment, California Granite and Flooring is out $130,000 in labor costs. $160,000. We have received precisely $0 from Hal Hayes. That, to me, doesn't constitute a working relationship. Construction is a very symbiotic relationship that requires give and take from both sides. And when one party is not giving, it's very hard for the other party to continue. With that being said, $160,000 constitute a lot of man hours, and we have been present there every day. Have there been occurrences like Mr. Mani has referred to, where maybe there was live scan issues and they were not able to make that Saturday, or there was not a materials available? He's not giving you the full details of why these things have occurred.
Let's go one by one of the 48 hours notices. I mean, we can start with this.
Well,
Make sure you use your mic.
I'm sorry, yeah, my name is Carlos.
Turn on your mic.
Sorry. By the way, my name is Carlos Sr., Carlos Jr., and Jonathan Arizmendi. So Jonathan was dealing with the process of the submittal, so he can tell you about that 48-hour notice.
I don't believe that first 48-hour notice was submitted during the submittal process. The submittal process was done with a different project manager. They have switched project managers, I believe, once or twice. The submittal process began with Tiffany, whom I gave a crossover list submitted by Dow Tile, which is one of the largest tile manufacturers in the country.
sorry to interrupt. That's going to be Exhibit 1 presented to us here is an email from Tiffany to Jonathan after a month of them going back and forth together with correspondences from Dow Tile, with an invoice from Dow Tile showing the crossovers and showing that Hal Hayes and the design team rejected our VE, value engineering costs, to try and save time and money that way.
Those crossover options were presented to Hal Hayes. They were expedited, brought to their office. I met with Tiffany multiple times in the middle of the city to hand deliver them to her to make sure they got there on time, and they were still rejected both by the architect and Hal Hayes.
It's worth noting, I was not able to find the actual award on the City of Palm Springs website of what exact date Hal Hayes was awarded, but they do have a publication on their website saying that in October of 2017 they were awarded. We were not contacted until December. Further into the process, nearing January, a thread gets forwarded to us, you can see in the exhibit, in which we find out that Hal Hayes was already aware of these lead time issues and they had already been talking directly to the tile manufacturer prior to us ever being involved. So a lot of our discomfort in their saying that we caused delays in lead time and that we have not tried to cooperate. We tried to save time and money, and we have done everything that we've been asked from the beginning, and it's all documented here.
To elaborate on that, those crossovers they were going to be in stock. They were to save time, the lead time. They were going to be on site. So any claim that Hal Hayes is making that the tile order placed them behind schedule, it's baseless.
Now, regarding the 48 hours notice, the second one, manpower. They switched superintendent. It used to be Jerry. Gary, I mean, we have emails with you. He said so you need to submit everything from your employees. It's going to take about 5 to 7 days to get approved. I submit packages probably for 12 employees. We got approved only 3. And I call him every day, send him, what's going on? Do we get any approvals? No, not yet, not yet. Until finally they make the decision and say, you know what, we're gonna let you use the employees, even if they're not approved. Just show me the packages that you submit, and they're gonna let us use the employees. So that's how we bring more guys to the project. Every time they request more guys, we bring a couple more guys. Now, not only that, we have to fix a lot of the walls. On the men's bathroom, the wall that it goes from the toilet area to the showers, we removed the tile in that wall twice because there's a frame problem or drywall problem, whatever. We already finished that wall, and they say it wasn't unacceptable, so we removed the tile, fixed the wall. Once again, they say it wasn't acceptable, so they bring the drywall guy to fix the wall, and at this point, I think they still have issues with that wall. We finish all the showers on the men's side. We have to remove the tile because they have issues with the plumbing. So a plumber fix his issues, and then we come back and install tile. That put us back on materials because I don't have enough materials to cover all those repairs. That's the 48, the second one. Third one, think the third one is regarding the locker rooms.
Defects, yeah, the
Okay.
defects and repairs.
Last meeting I have with Joe Hayes, Karim was here. We agreed on all the repairs, and we agreed that I was gonna order all the tile, what I did, and I ordered the tile, and then they told me, Carlos, you cannot touch these locker rooms because they're gonna take over. You're gonna be doing only repairs in the afternoon. When you start doing the second phase, that's when you guys gonna start doing the repairs in the locker rooms. From one day to the other, they just sent me an email. What happened? When you gonna start with the repairs? Well, we don't have the materials yet. But if you're gonna change the plan, as soon as we get the materials, we send the guys back to start working on the repairs. And I have the daily reports, I have the certified payrolls showing that after we receive that email, we send the guys to start the repairs. We spent 3 weeks doing repairs here on the locker rooms. So I don't know where they got the lack of the manpower. I mean, we got guys all the time here.
Now, again, the situation it's tricky to navigate. Tile in itself recognizes that there will be imperfections and impurities with the final product when viewed under light and under certain things. So there are tolerances that are already specified to go into that industry. With that in mind, with the dissatisfaction of the tile installation and the requested repairs, which were extensive, and we weren't just going to start ripping stuff out, we said, let's bring a third-party inspector in, a qualified professional tile inspector who, here are his qualifications, which will also be submitted as an exhibit. His name is David Gray. He has authored tile literature, has an extensive list of projects that he has inspected, worked on, repaired, et cetera, et cetera. And his report you guys already have. His report concludes by saying that after impartially talking to all the parties involved, because he was not there as a favor or any relation to us, he gathered that there was large problems with the substrate that no matter how hard you try and fix it are not going to be perfect. And he does annotate there at the bottom that it's worth noting that when you do analyze and inspect tile at its final inspection, you shouldn't stare at it too long under a certain light or try to magnify it. I have noticed that in that locker room that is in question, the tile finish is of a semi-gloss finish. Semi-gloss reflects a lot more light, and so with the different angles of the lights coming in, it does create wavy and curvature effects that are a lot more obvious when there are defects in the walls. Not all the bathrooms are semi-gloss. Some of them are matte finish, which will absorb the light and doesn't give that same finish. Not as many complaints in those bathrooms because it's a lot different.
Back on the subject of the tile, a lot of complaints come from the look of the tile, but how this tile is made, it's a ceramic tile, so it's made in an oven, and they're baked. So not any one tile will be similar to another tile, so imperfections are bound to happen. And this is documented by Dow Tile.
These tiles we brought in, which we can leave here as well, part of a recent batch, a reorder batch that has recently arrived and has been rejected as do not install, not altered by us, directly from Dow Tile, the largest tile manufacturer in America. There are deficiencies, there are chips, there are problems with the edge composition, there are glazing issues. These are relevant issues that Dow Tile has gotten ahead of and has recognized that there are these issues with it. However, it is within their tolerance. So unfortunately, although the tile is not perfect, Dow Tile has sent it to a third-party testing center, and it has returned with intolerance of all their industry standard allowances
And
for defects.
by the way, the last 4 bathrooms, they're still unfinished because according to the last meeting we have with Joe and everybody else, they asked me, why you're not inspecting the tile? And that's what we're doing. I mean, we're inspecting all the bulmos, we're inspecting all the tile, and if they're not acceptable, we're not gonna install it. Like you say, last week we got this, we showed to Corey, the superintendent, and he said, no, unacceptable. Call the manufacturer. We sent pictures and everything, and they said, that's the way we make this tile.
And we're dealing with very long lead times.
And we
that
have
no
everything in
control over.
writing.
We've pulled all sorts of favors, overnight shipped, had drivers go out to remote locations to pick up tile. Believe me, and this is all well documented. We have gone above and beyond to try and do everything to ameliorate the issue that has been present here.
So
And-
right now, there's 3 tiles for those 4 bathrooms that we're still waiting on those because we rejected, and we tell the manufacturer we're not gonna take it. They're gonna make those for us again. See if Corey accept those, and then we can install it. Once again, I'm doing this for a long time. I never have a problem like this one. And believe me, we are a very small business, and at this point, like he said, with hotels, labor, it's 170. The materials alone, it's about $70,000. So it's about $240,000 hit when we have a contract for $130,000.
You're talking double labor costs that was anticipated going into this event. Now, I'd like to also make note, Mr. Mani says that we did not let them know about the substrate. In the exhibit that also will be submitted, there is a lengthy email in April to Mr. Mani in which 4 separate change orders were presented with verification pictures and everything associated necessary to be approved. They were performed by direction of Hal Hayes. And one of these was wall prep. Again, there's a video showing all of this. Mr. Mani's response was, I will make time to get around to it. Every time I touched upon it, no response. Every time I had a request to try and settle this so that there wasn't a looming issue lingering over everyone's head, no response.
There's probably 5, 6, or 7 extra work orders. We sent it to him like months ago, 3, 4 months ago. He just ignored everything. Just work, and that's it.
His response, I believe, at one point was talk to Corey. I said, Karun, there's issues that Corey and us cannot resolve on our own. We need you. I'm not going to drive to Palm Springs just to meet you out there.
What was the requested additional work order? You were going to fix the imperfections on the substrate?
So when we arrive and saw the unplumbed wall, we say, hey, this is not ready to receive tile. In order for that to happen, we're going to have to do extensive wall prep to even try and get it straight. You could spend hours and days on a wall trying to get it straight, but when there's a bulge, that bulge is never fully going to go away. There's going to be some remnant of it left if there's, unlevelness from the framing of the drywall. Now, tile, again, we're left with a very ugly plate of worms at the end because it's all compounded. It's compounded errors from every trade prior to us, and everyone thinks that the finishers can come in and do a lot of miraculous detail work and hide all those things. Most of the time we can, and our guys are very talented, union qualified installers who have extensive amounts of square footage installed in their careers, and they've been able to fix some incredibly terrible situations. In this situation, the substrate was so bad that is what is showing through. That is what Mr. Gray notes in his report, and we have some notes from the project. I mean, we have a bathroom. Some of the designs show 8 tile rows to be installed. When you go to actually do the installation, only 7 fit. There's a difference of 8 to 10 inches in that particular room. It makes a big difference.
We spent 1 day, 2 guys, starting that tile installation, and then when we find out that the room was smaller, we have to remove everything. And we dealing with those issues since we started the project. By the way, my guy who started the project, Angel, he's 62 years old, doing tile installation for almost 40 years. I don't know if they're required for more experience, but this guy knows what he's doing.
Okay. Let me move now to ask some questions of some of our witnesses. So, Joe, as the owner's rep, and you've been there every day, help me understand some of the points that California Granite made as far as the initial coordination on value engineering and selecting a different tile that wouldn't have a lead time and the crossover. I need help understanding that. And then just generally help me understand some of the coordination issues between Hal Hayes on the substrate and California Granite whether you were aware of their efforts to try to resolve the imperfections on the substrate, and any other information that I need to know regarding the work.
Well, the project started on December 18th. And even prior to the start date, both the architect and I were contacted by Daltile. Daltile had informed us that nobody had been in touch with them regarding this project. They were anxious to get the order in place because of the lead times. So we had...
Help me understand why there's such a lead time on this tile. Is it a special tile that
It's a special order tile. That's correct. The lead times are from 6 to 8 weeks. So this was actually going on prior to mobilization, which was December 18th. I believe it was 2 weeks, perhaps, that we worked on this prior to Hal Hayes mobilizing to the site. And the Daltile rep was, concerned due to the lead times that we needed to move this process along quickly as possible. The crossovers that Carlos is referencing.
So help me understand, because I don't know the lingo. What's a crossover?
A crossover is a product that is a substitution for what's originally specified because of concerns that lead time would negatively impact the schedule. So knowing that the lead times were significant and recognizing that the requirement, the specification to provide long lead items performed and ordered within a 3-day period, which didn't happen, she was concerned that this would impact the schedule negatively. So as an effort to try to assist us, she provided the crossovers that I believe Carlos is referencing. I haven't seen them, but we did get an email from Daltile stating that if you were unable to wait the 6 to 8 weeks for the product, we can provide these in a 2-week period. So I had sent some emails to the project manager at the time for Hal Hayes, Tiffany Barnes, and I did not get any responses. Then the
let me interrupt real quickly.
Yes.
So refresh my memory, because I'm looking at California Grant's subcontract, which was executed by Hal Hayes on January 8th. When was the contract awarded to Hal Hayes?
November 27th, I believe the council made the award. I have to double check that date, but I believe the bid was August, the end of August, and the council awarded November 27th.
Do we know when the city's contract was executed with Hal Hayes? I don't know if we
I
have.
believe it was around that period. I would have to check. I can get that if you like.
I'm just trying to establish, was there a long period of time between the city's contract with Hal Hayes and Hal Hayes' contract with California Granite?
Not remembering the date that Carlos said the contract was executed with Hal Hayes. I believe there was a period of.
Yeah, like I
delay.
said, I couldn't find an award date online. There's just a publication on Hal Hayes' website saying that they had been awarded the project.
November 28th. And then there was the amendment one where they added, that was November 1st.
Okay, so just for the record, the contract was awarded October 4th of
October 4th.
2017.
I have it up.
And then just due to process, the contract was executed November 28th. Okay, sorry, Joe, go ahead.
So at that point, we were trying to work with the project manager at the time. The weekly meetings, construction meetings had began. Week after week, we kept reminding her that this is a concern because we have seen no submittal. Daltile is telling us that based on their communication with Hal Hayes, that they were not getting responses in terms of who was the subcontractor. I believe that Daltile at that point was making a considerable effort to try to assist us.
So help me understand, why was Dow Tile even aware of the project and reaching out to us if there wasn't even yet a subcontract between Hal Hayes and Cal?
They were
California
aware of
Granite?
the project. I think Marina can speak better to that.
What happened is we had been working with Dow Tile in a previous project that finished probably a month before we started this project. And we used the same type of tile in different colors, but it was the same tile. So we knew they had a lead time. So we asked her, when we knew that this project was in line, we said, has any order been placed? Has any communication happened? And that's when she said, we haven't heard anything, we don't know anything. We brought it up, and I believe there's email communication going back to the general contractor that explained, heads up, this is a long lead item, and we need the submittal so that we can get this moving. But that's how.
And why is it that you specify, what's so special about this tile that you can't specify something that's shelf-ready? I'm just curious.
We can specify different tiles, and we could have specified probably a tile that was a 2-week lead item, but this tile comes in a specific size and different colorway than the other ones. We are using some of the 2-week tile on parts of this project too, but it's just based on the colors and the sizes, the shapes of them.
So can you address their comments about the crossover or the substitution that they had suggested?
Yes,
and-
just it's important to note that the floor tile was substituted. The architect did permit a substitution for the floor tile. So at that junction, we were having the weekly meetings, and we were, continuously reminding the project manager that we haven't gotten anything yet. This is a concern. We ended up getting the tile submittal, wall and floor tile, I believe, 7 weeks after the contractor mobilized to the site. So obviously, when you're in a 7-week, when you receive a submittal 7 weeks after the notice to proceed in an 8-week space, that's going to have a huge negative impact on the schedule for the locker rooms. So there were some, if memory serves me, and again, maybe Marina can speak to this a little bit better, I believe there was a submittal with a substitution for wall tile, which was rejected. So
And why was it rejected?
Because of the colors and sizes and shapes, completely different. So what was going to happen is if we accepted that tile, all of the layout had to be reworked.
sometimes crossovers are difficult because obviously if you're specifying a custom product and you're given crossovers for that product, sometimes it's very difficult to get something that's similar in color, size, and shape. So,
Well, I feel I hear you want to respond, so.
A couple of things, yeah. Jonathan was the one working hand in hand with Tiffany early on. As mentioned, we come from Escondido, and Jonathan was making it out here to the meetings to assist Tiffany, hand in hand, working with her and really trying to take that burden off of her that she expressed to him numerous times that she was just in over her head and did not know what was going on. At a certain point, and again, he can speak to it a little better, but his RFIs that were being sent to her were not even being relayed. And we've had problems with that things that we were asking and trying to get answers to and trying to get problems resolved were not even being addressed to the architectural team.
And if you want to speak up, let me know. 'Cause-
I would like to speak up.
Okay.
So going back to the issuance of the contract, so Hal Hayes Construction was issued the contract November 28th. Despite it being executed on January 8th, it was sent to Cal Granite on December 4th. And so if you look at the top right, so we did turn it around rather quickly, and it wasn't until a month after we issued it that it was actually returned from Cal Granite. I countersigned it within 4 days. And so I wanted to make that clear. The second thing is regardless of this crossover, the substitution, Number one, as previously stated, the prime contract gives us a very specific window of substitutions. The substitution or crossover that was being pursued by our subcontractor was far beyond that window. And so regardless of whether that substitution was going to be approved or unapproved, the subcontractor still had an obligation to submit the product consistent with the contract documents. To my knowledge, that didn't happen. So when, as you're going through, you may hope for a substitution, but you still need to hedge your bet and propose the product that was actually submitted in the event that your substitution is going to be denied. The fact that they didn't do that is what set off a chain reaction of events that put us into this position that we're at today.
So why was it you didn't just move forward and order the tile that was
I'd
specified?
like to comment on that, sure. Firstly, in that thread that I mentioned that became news to us, as a surprise, that revealed that they had already been in contact and dealing with this. I believe there is a statement from the city letting Hal Hayes know that the order was to be placed by them, letting them know that regardless of what their intention was to do with the subcontract, this lead time was already an issue and it should be placed by them. When we got it, this is not very typical. We get an email saying we intend to award you guys this contract. A couple days later or a day later, we get an email saying, be prepared for forthcoming RFIs for changes coming to this. We're not going to sign a subcontract that's going to be drastically changed according to an RFI. So when Jonathan began working very closely hand in hand, daily talking to Christina from Daltau, which is one of the lead architectural representatives, who I imagine has a good relationship with them because she was going far and above what I've seen any Daltau rep do for anyone before, and working hand in hand with Jonathan trying to solve all these issues, Tiffany became a barrier. Try to jump Tiffany, still no answer. So it's not that we didn't submit it, we did, but because they're long lead items, they have dies and swatches that they have to change out, so they don't have samples readily available for those to be shipped out immediately, where they do for the shelved tiles.
So at that point, we finally did get the submittals 7 weeks later, and there were issues with them. There were resubmittals required as a result. So it really hamstrung the progress in the locker rooms. So to speak to the substrates, there were 2 locations that were considerable. One was a new wall which was installed in the men's locker room. It had, within an 8-foot span, a bulge in it that deflected each end to approximately 5/8 of an inch to 3/4 of an inch, well outside the tolerances. There was a second wall that was in the corridor going from the men's lavatory to the men's showers, which was an existing wall. We had an extension of that wall and an infill. In those cases, we understand that there's difficulties there and that there are challenges there, but the contract requires if there are deficiencies, we're to be notified. So we have an opportunity to address the deficiencies. We were never notified until as Carlos stated, until the installers arrived. When the installers arrived, they started pointing out deficiencies in the walls in these 2 locations specifically. They didn't address other areas because obviously immediately once we found out that there were deficiencies in those 2 locations, we checked every inch of those walls. Some of them were a little bit in question, but we were of the view that with expertise installation, as Carlos said, real craftsmen can work around those issues. But the 2 locations that were considerable were the 2 that I mentioned. So the locations that Carlos addressed in the shower valves, that was an issue. So what happened there is the plumbing was not, the shower valves were not set at the proper depth. So once that was identified, it was already, the walls were already installed and the walls were already waterproofed. So at that point, Kincaid Industries, who's the plumber on the project, cut out an approximate 1x1 square at each shower valve and reset the valves to the proper depth. So once that happened, again, trying to stay on top of the deficiencies in the walls, which we were being informed of as the tile setters were going along, you know, I directed the superintendent on the project at the time that all these issues needed to be corrected. So they weren't. And at one point, I had directed them to, and provided them a fix in concert with the architect about how to deal with the shower valves by using a smaller drywall dimension. But the next day I came in and Carlos's crew were tiling right over these deficiencies. So I expressed to the superintendent, there's documents in emails, documents in meeting minutes, notices of noncompliance, that this had to be corrected. And it was corrected. They did take the tile off the wall, and the repair was done in an acceptable manner, and then it was retiled. So those are the concerns that we had about the substrate. The two locations were the main issues. So there were repairs that were done on the wall in the corridor from the lavatory to the showers. There was a bulge, and again, this is the wall that was an infill and an extension where a portion of the existing wall remained. So at that location, we had an area that was considerably out of tolerance. So again, I was trying to work with the project superintendent to work out a solution. So we did have, you know, a discussion about it and what I thought was an arrangement for correction. The following day I go in and the correction that we discussed was not what was being done. They took out an approximate 4 by 6 section of the wall, removed the den shield. A den shield, the specification requires a 5/8 inch drywall with a den shield application on top at 1/4 of an inch. So they removed the den shield and then installed a tile without.
Who do you mean they? Who's doing this work?
I'm not certain who removed the den shield. When I came in that morning, it was already done. I don't know if they were directed by Hal Hayes to do this or not. But as I came in, rather than the correction that we had discussed with the superintendent, what they did was they removed the den shield and applied thin set to compensate for the void by installing thin set at approximately 5/8 of an inch to 3/4 inch thick. Pictures, considerable documentation. So I said, take it out. And they did. And that correction was made, but in that location, there are still issues with the installation as it is today, along with the rest of the areas.
So this is the first time I'm seeing this third-party inspection. Is this the only third-party inspection that was done of the tile work?
There were one that I have in documentation form, which is, oops, sorry. We do have, this is the report that you can see on the screen. This is the TCNA inspector's report that Carlos hired to do a survey of the work and provide a report.
So that's different than this one?
Those are his qualifications. He's the man who conducted
Okay.
Yeah, and when we got this report, we read through it, and it essentially confirmed all of the issues that we were addressing. He did take photographs, but here are a list of many of the concerns that he pointed out, and it's completely consistent with our observations as well.
So this report is demonstrating poor workmanship?
Yes, it demonstrates poor workmanship, but in addition, it identifies the substrate issue and identifies the possibility of defective product. But yes, it does identify poor workmanship, as you can see. We have missing grout, poor workmanship in tile cuts, 3427-3428. Those are the pictures that he has numbered, missing grout, tile cuts out past through the surface bullnose. We had what is commonly referred to as fat skinny in the grout lines. They were inconsistent throughout.
So how does this report support your argument that it's not workmanship?
Yeah, so that's not to say that we haven't had any errors or that we've been 100%, mistake-free on the job. Obviously, some of the grouting issues are due to us, but the grouting issue does also relate back to the unplumbed walls. The wavy grout lines, the unstraight setting, that it all goes back down to the wall. If you look at the installation, if you go to the actual physical location, there's areas where you can see at the edge that there's just fat, wide gaps that are left just because it doesn't fit.
There's been a lot of comments about defective tile and whether it's tile that's inside tolerance or defective. Was there ever a determination that the tile received from Dow Tile was defective?
Yes.
So can you
Yes.
explain that?
We had Dow Tile representative, excuse me, come to the site twice, very early in the project. So at this junction, Carlos had all of the walls waterproofed and the floors were floated. The ceramic tile started installation at the base perimeter. So at that junction, prior to, I believe, only the base on the site at that time was installed, Carlos had pointed out to me and Marina that he was concerned about the product. The sizes were inconsistent. There was a considerable amount of color that didn't flow through the entire piece. There was thickness issues, there were size issues, so we called Christina in, the representative from Dow Tile, and she came in and took some pieces, looked at the work, and identified that, yes, we do have defective product here. And recommended that we set aside all of the defective pieces because we have 2 pallets full of boxes and, to sit through that whole process in one meeting was impossible. So we had directed Hal Hayes, superintendent at the time, to set these tiles aside, who was directing the subcontractor, to set them aside, and that Dow Tile would replace all the defective pieces at no cost, even if it meant replacing the entire order. So,
But then that causes a complication because it's another whatever number of weeks to get a new shipment?
correct.
And what did Dow Tile say about that?
Dow Tile did not have a solution for the lead time in this matter. They would only state that they were willing to stand by their product 100% and replace it in its entirety, if it meant the full order. So, about,
Either of you have comments about that?
Just that we agree. We agree that the Dow Tile rep came out and it was pointed out to Cal Granite that there was defective tile and that they installed it anyways.
Comment, I know this is a combination of 3 things. Defective tile, substrate, and that give you some errors on the finishes, which I take the responsibility since we have this problem to fix it. But when there's no communication, when we agree, as soon as we get the materials, we will be on site in the afternoons, fix everything. I talk to Corey. As soon as we get the materials, I'll be there myself, inspect everything. We're not gonna do any grouting until Joe or somebody from the police department, they accept it. No, we have to get it done. Bring the guys, start working, and then from one day to the other, we need to finish this. We removed the thresholds that they have complaints about the way we make the thresholds. And my guy called me because he said, well, now they tell me that I need to install those thresholds back. So I don't know what's the deal. I mean, they want to get it done right. They want to fix it. I don't know where we at right now. As far as the tile, believe me, this is holding all my life. Personal life, business life. This is in my head and my hands and my eyes all day long, every single day, even the weekends. Putting pressure to dull tile, getting the tile as soon as possible. There's no help. Even if it's their fault that the tile is defected, it's going to take 8 weeks.
So it sounds like at a certain point, all the walls, the floor was floated, the walls were waterproofed. So at a certain point in time before tile went on the wall, there could have, should have, was an assessment about the suitability of tile going on the wall and not having imperfections in the substrate. So help me understand the process on that so that it's not the tile installer showing up and saying, oh, there's a huge dent in the wall, and what do you want me to do with it at that point?
Sure. So in the realm of change orders, Hal Hayes Construction acknowledges that Cal Granite is owed change orders for some of the work that that Joe described earlier, specifically related to fixing the substrate in 2 areas, which they did do, which they are entitled change orders for, which regardless of the outcome of this hearing, they will be paid for. I've already approved those. It should just be a matter of a couple days before they receive those in their office. Additionally, the work related to the plumbing valves, I think that there's 5 change orders in total that have been approved. So I would just like to touch on that real quick because we've spoken about change orders and substrate. But in relation to the substrate, as the tile contractor comes in, before they start their trade, then that's where we're relying on them to go through and do a walk and make sure that any areas are identified as acceptable or not acceptable. Any deficiencies are brought forward to Hal Hayes Construction, and then they're either paid to if they need to float the substrate, or if it needs to be worked, or if it can be corrected by their guys during the tile installation, then it's noted and proceeded with, or we call timeout and we go back and we rework it with the previous subcontractor.
You had mentioned there were discrepancies in, I think it's the lobby restroom? Where there was off by 8 inches.
Lobby restroom.
So, I mean, that happens in plans, but
Sir, yeah.
at what point do you normally initially review contract plans and review as-built dimensions when you're planning a project?
We go by the plans, okay? That's how we order materials and we do the layouts. And that's what they did the first day. They start the layout according to the plans. But when they start setting tile, they notice that they short.
So you wouldn't measure first to confirm the dimensions before starting the layout?
As Joe mentioned, we did let them know that after those 2 were noted, the entire project was walked. Now, it's worth noting, these errors should have been caught before we were ever on site. It wasn't until our installer started pointing out, hey, this is 5 inches short. Hey, this is 1.5 inches short. Hey, there's a problem here. I can't speak to it, but it seems that at that point it was reviewed. I don't know if it had been caught and ignored, hoping that we would take care of it, or if it was just overlooked. But I think that's worth noting that it could have been taken care of while the other trades were there, not once we arrived. It shouldn't have been our eyes that caught it.
It's supposed to be an R5, you know? This particular wall has been changed, you know? The measurements because this, because that. We don't have no R5. So how are we gonna know that the layout changed?
When there was a dimension change on the plans, it was RFI'd by Hal Hayes. and we did make the changes, that the architect did make the changes. So if we were noticed that there was a dimension bust, we responded to the RFI.
There was an RFI, and I did come out on site at the request of Hall Hayes. I believe they placed a request to you, and you called me to come on site and to see both of the lobby restrooms because the layout wasn't going to work. The day I showed up was probably the next day, I believe, after you called me, and the tile was already up in 3 walls on each of the bathrooms. So it's difficult to just adjust the layout when they already have tile up that is going to have to be demoed. But we responded to those RFIs.
The problem is we never get that RFI.
To complete the discussion about the Dow Tiles representatives' participation in the program, we asked Christina to come out for a second time for a meeting to discuss in more detail the defects in the product. So we had a meeting. I believe Karun was there, Carlos was there, 2 Dow Tile reps were there, and it was confirmed that they had some defective product, but they told us that they had never received a single tile back from the subcontractor to request replacement pieces.
Well,
So,
I didn't give it to them because I'm not dealing with them. I'm dealing with the different store in Escondido, and we give it to the store in Escondido, and they send it to the manufacturer.
Who we have a pretty close relationship with, and as he mentioned, is this strained that relationship a lot because of all that has transpired so far. And Delta has, unfortunately, they haven't been able to provide a solution and say, here's a new batch of tile, but they've been pretty proactive in at least communicating and maintaining that throughout.
yeah, they've been very helpful, and they really did make an effort to assist us in the project. But it's once defective product is installed, it's a challenge for them now to have it replaced. So, to my knowledge, to date, none of the tile has been returned to them.
So was it returned or
Yeah.
was it used?
No, not all of them, but my sales rep requests samples, which we give it to them, and he sent it to the manufacturer. And also, not only that, he got lots of pictures showing how the tile's crooked. It's small, one color is smaller than the other. I mean, there's a lot of issues with it.
So the first batch that was received, as I recall, you said the Dow Tile rep came and agreed based on what she saw that there were it was defective tile. But you proceeded with the work, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think I heard you say you were getting direction to just proceed with the work to meet the schedule and use the tile that you had because you didn't want to wait.
Correct.
For
And one side, we
replacement
have
tile.
the pressure to finish the project, and the other side, we have this type of material, which is unacceptable. But by the time we brought in the sales rep from Dow Tile, we already installed the bulbs. I count every single bulbs. I send the order to Dow Tile. They replace it, and together with that, I give them samples of each color, how the tiles are defected and all that. He sent it to the manufacturer and said, whatever you guys need, we're gonna replace it. No, and they're doing it right now. I have all the bonus. I mean, like I said, we can correct what we need to correct. We just need to have communication. When we're gonna do it, how we're gonna do it. Because one day we say something and they come up with something else.
Yeah, so it seems that there's been a lot of pressure, and I can't speak specifically to the details of this. I don't know the conversations or who's involved, but obviously the police department is very eager to get back in there. And so there's this pressure of rented trailers, and there was moments where it was, yeah, there's a solution, and then Thursday, no, they're taking over on Tuesday, install whatever you've got.
Now,
And I have emails saying that, install whatever you've
just to
got
finalize
verbatim.
this, we received the tile for the last 4 bathrooms, I don't know, 2 months ago. We inspect the wall nose, they're unacceptable. I reject it, I reorder it. We didn't get those yet. That's why those bathrooms are incomplete.
So help me understand where we are at today as far as what work has been completed and accepted, what work has not been completed and accepted.
There have been several areas that the subcontractor was given an opportunity to perform corrections. Those corrections were performed in some locations. I want to say approximately 5 or so, and that work is unacceptable.
And one last comment. I don't know why, but we're working with epoxy grout. We're in Palm Springs, 120 degrees. We cannot work with epoxy grout. So if there is mistakes, if there is grout problems that we need to fix, the overlap is going to be there. The error is going to show. Because epoxy grout gets dry fast. So that's why I keep saying, you know, we need coordination. If we're going to do repairs, we have to do the repairs all together, and then we have to go out all together after somebody approves the repairs. This is not easy. I mean, we're working with two different things. I mean, defective tile and also the epoxy grout is super complicated to work with.
We have video of repaired areas, if you would like to see it. Is it? Let me stop the video. Are we up there yet? No? It should be up. I'm not sure why it's not showing. Yeah. Maybe Rick, if Rick is in the building. He showed me how to do it, but that didn't work out. Yeah, so presentation is my laptop, right? So that should be coming up. Oh, see, so that comes up. So keep on coming. Credenza is supposed to be the iPad.
Correct.
So.
Did you hit video? Did you hit video?
Well, maybe we're gonna make it. Yeah, we just played it earlier.
Did you hit play?
No, it doesn't play. It should be showing. Should we unplug it? Plug it back in and try that? Okay, so this is a repaired area, and you can see the repaired area by a Makita cut line. So these are replaced stock, what you're looking at here. This is in the men's locker room. This is on the entrance point to the laboratories. There you'll see. Is that brown defective? That brown is defective. The color does not go through. So clearly we're putting defective tile after defective tile. At the very top of this video, you will see a little cut line where you could see the Makita had cut so that that will identify an area that's been replaced. And it'll be coming up right about right at the next level. So you see that cut line at the top? You can see a very 3/4 of an inch right there. That's the end of their cut. So everything above that was not replaced, everything below that was replaced. Here's a second area. Actually, this area was not replaced, but the next video is one that will be replaced. This is a box inside the men's locker room. You will see the workmanship that we were concerned about. The boxes.
Does this have to do with substrate at all?
No. These areas, we were never pointed out deficiencies in the substrate in these locations.
No, that's a defect tile, as you can see on the corners.
This tile box, the grout line should not be on the edge of the box. The grout line should
Right,
be
the
inside
surface,
the box.
the surface bullnose pieces there, which are on the inside, according to the plans, should be on the outside. So that you don't see a perimeter grout line around the entire box. Every shower box and every shelf in this space is done as you see it here. At the very bottom, you'll see that the tile is short, does not go over the countertop, because the countertops are also an exception that doesn't have anything to do with Carlos, of course, but the countertop should be going all the way to drywall so that the tile then becomes my backsplash. This next video is repaired tile. This is on the wall in the men's restroom, very close proximity to the very first video that you saw.
So that's all chipped cuts.
This is all, one of the challenges that the installers had were their cuts. I mean, it seemed like almost every tile that was cut was chipped to no end. There you'll see misaligned grout joints.
And that's the same tile that came chipped, that was already chipping from factory.
And we're not talking about factory chips, we're talking about tiles that were cut.
Correct, but I mean, it might be worth it to consider that the body of the tile is compromised if it comes chipped and it's chipping just simply from shipping.
Understood. However, when an installer is holding a defective product in his hand, why it would end up on the wall is anybody's.
Then we're not gonna do the work, Joe.
And then we get 48-hour notice saying we're not complying. It's a very tricky situation.
The point being is that the corrections are unacceptable. I have more, if you'd like to see more.
So I think at this point, we'll just go ahead and hear closing statements, if you have any. It's your opportunity to go ahead and respond to anything you've heard. I said 5 minutes. I mean, I'll give you some additional time if you need it. But if you want to start, Kirby, go ahead.
Sure, thank you. So going through this, off the top, I want to state for the record, at no time did Hal Hayes Construction ever direct Cal Granite to install the defective tiles, unless they can produce that in writing. We've given explicit instructions to our team that that was not to occur, to install defective tiles. So I wanted to state that for the record. Off the top, the gentleman next to me, started talking about this not being a healthy working relationship, and that they haven't been paid anything. Well, the relationship is where it is largely because Hal Hayes Construction's gone to bat so many times for Cal Granite and been let down so many times. Hal Hayes Construction's relationship with the city of Palm Springs is greatly strained due to the defective workmanship. For them to sit here and claim that there's been no communication regarding the defective tile is lost on me. I myself have attended at least 4 meetings where the city's been perfectly clear, where Hal Hayes Construction's been perfectly clear as to what repairs need to take place specifically in the locker rooms. We had such well-documented lead up to the repairs that had to take place in the locker rooms. I still remember the date of the tile delivery was August 2nd. We talked about it for weeks. The first run at installing the tile was not acceptable, and the direction to the subcontractor was go through and it the entire locker rooms need to be in compliance with plans and specifications. Come to find out, August 2nd happens and they didn't order enough tile. For them to say that they've had the project manned up adequately, that's not accurate either. I mean, that week, Bill Hemsley and I were trading correspondence several times. I committed to him to come out and review their work that Friday. I came out to review their work that Friday. They weren't even working in the locker rooms. They were working up in the detectives bureau area because they only had 3 guys on site. And so the immense pressure that the city was under, the immense pressure that Hal Hayes Construction was under after the city being in these trailers for so long, to not even have guys there installing the tile the Friday after the replacement tile comes in, and then come to find out that not even enough replacement tile was ordered was hugely disappointing. The statement that they haven't been paid for anything, due to these workmanship issues, Hal Hayes Construction is exposed to extended general conditions in-house costs. We haven't been paid for the tile, rightfully so. We're experiencing huge overages on the trailers due to the fact that the police department hasn't been able to move in related to these tile workmanship issues. And on top of that, we're exposed to liquidated damages as well, potentially, in the locker room areas. And so all of those things far outweigh what the $240,000 that Cal Granite says that they are owed here. So regardless of the decision that is made, I wanted to go on record that that's the reason why Cal Granite has not been paid to date. And then again, circling back to the workmanship, again, I think the tile report speaks for itself. Again, regardless of, even if substrate was an issue, the subcontractor did accept it by starting work in those areas. And then additionally, when we look at the grout lines, when we look at the workmanship, when we look at the installation of the defective tiles, I walked one of the locker rooms myself, and to see bullnose tiles that normally go on the corners installed right in the middle of walls, it's indefensible. And for us, as we move forward, if we only had small locker rooms in front of us, or small restrooms in front of us, we might consider trying to weather the project with this subcontractor. But knowing the amount of precision that's going to be required for the tile that's remaining on the contract, we have no confidence in this subcontractor to execute the repairs in the locker rooms or with the mosaic seal that has, I think, around 100 different colors and types of tile in it.
First, touching upon the report, if you guys would like to see it and scroll down to the final line, his recommendation says rework areas is noted with the understanding that out of tolerance conditions in the substrate will make it impossible to maintain true alignment of tile modules and consistent grout lines. Observation of the work should be done at a reasonable distance and viewing time. Again, this is a tile professional, independent of us, who came and evaluated all. I mean, and that's his professional diagnosis. We have never shied away from repairs, But again, there's just a lot of disconnect and no coordination. And in order for that to happen, I think everyone here would agree that it's hard to work with no pay. That obviously puts a great strain on it. And I think this hearing is a prime example of the relationship that we've had. Is just a complete severance, everyone moving in their own direction. But if they are willing to work with us and coordinate with us, we are more than capable of completing the work that is required.
And just going back to August 2nd, Friday. It's not that we don't want to continue with the work. Not all the tile arrive at the same time. Probably they don't understand this, and I explained to them many times. The manufacturer runs batches by the color. So some of the colors arrive first, and then the other colors arrive a week after. That's why I have to move my guys. If I don't have material to work on the locker areas, I have to move them to the other bathrooms to continue working. As soon as we get that material, we're going back to that area. That's the response.
Well, this has been informative for me, so thank you both for your time. And I know you put effort into producing all your documents and reviewing the history of this. Like I said, I'm going to take all of this into consideration. Do we have all of the exhibits, basically from Cal Granite?
I want to submit these final two documents,
Okay.
and that's it.
So we will.
By the way, we request all the information regarding the substrate problems and by email, and we never received that. We like to get that information, please.
What information is
From
that?
the general contractor, and I think from Joe. We request that by email.
What information is that?
Yeah, I don't know what documentation specifically he may be looking for, but just any correspondence back and forth, the conversation that may have happened that may give us insight as to what exactly is, the problem with the walls.
All right. I'll give this some careful consideration. Both sides have made some persuasive arguments one way or the other. So I'm going to take this under submission, and I'll issue a written decision, hopefully by Monday, but definitely next week, because I know we all have to move forward. So my decision will relate to whether the work by California Granite, the subcontract listed in the bid, is substantially unsatisfactory and not in substantial accordance with the contract specifications, and is substantially delaying and disrupting the progress of the work, and whether I will or will not grant the request of Hal Hayes to substitute Cal Granite.
Can I make one last comment? I believe when they were talking about more tile, it seemed to me that the only thing that they were honing on was the relationship that they have with them. And to me, a relationship doesn't constitute qualifications or experience. Unless there is something outstanding that they can offer that we cannot, I believe that they are not capable of offering absolutely anything that we are not either. They cannot rush tile. They cannot bake the tile for the manufacturer. So any repairs are going to be done the same way it's been done for the last 100 years. So.
Okay. So with that, I'm going to conclude the hearing. And again, I appreciate everyone's time and attention to this matter. Thank you.